So we'll start this as we're going to try and record this to disk and then upload it to YouTube. Later in the year, we're going to try and do this streaming. But at the moment, the bandwidth upwards is going to be a horrible experience, and we don't want to have a horrible experience. So I'm going to turn this over to Charlie to do the introductions.
Great. Welcome, everyone. First timers, we're here tonight. Great. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Our first speaker tonight is Armin Kroll. He's the director and lead developer at jTribe, a local developer for mobile apps, which is here. I contacted him through Cocoa Heads, which is a meetup group for app developers. And he's going to be talking to us tonight about making apps from idea to app store. So, Armin?
Thanks, Charlie. Good evening. I'll try something new. So this is a brand new presentation which I haven't done before, but I think it's going to be fine. So I'm going to talk about from an app idea into the App Store and the general process that's behind that. I also want to mention some tools for anybody who's interested in getting into app development, what kind of tools are involved in getting apps done, and maybe show you some code and the tools we use for development, and also want to show you a real example of something I'm working on right now. It's kind of a personal project, but it follows that process I'm going to talk about tonight. So, a bit about me. My name is Armin, and I'm the co-founder of a consulting company in Melbourne, just around the corner in Manchester Lane. We run a company called jTribe, and we are all about mobile. So we do mobile development for iOS and Android and mobile web. I'm the chief developer there for iOS, and I'm also an iOS trainer. So for the appetite after this presentation, please come and join me at an iOS training course. My Twitter handle is @Percival, and shoot me an email if you have any questions after the talk. A bit about the company I'm running. So we're running a consulting company. We started in 2008 when Apple opened up the App Store. We thought, oh wow, it's going to be great. This is certainly the next big thing, and I think we got it right. We started in 2008 with some experimental apps we developed, and we learned the whole process. In 2008, the process was very clunky. Today, the process is much smoother, and we have provided tools and improved the tool chain. It's really a pleasure these days to develop apps, and the community is great. So we set out to build apps that have an impact. We try to take complex problems and minimize them into a simple solution for the end user. We thought there's no better way to make something simpler than using it on a mobile phone. Examples of that are my favorite example is internet banking. If I'm on the mobile, if I'm on the browser on my desktop, there's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of space, and there's a lot of things happening on the screen. So as soon as I go on my mobile, everything is much clearer and much simpler, and I these days do my banking almost 100% on the mobile phone, because it's much bigger and much simpler. So that's a sign for me that the design and people thinking of how to put features onto this limited space has obviously to innovate, and I think this.
I'm just letting people. That's not you. It's me. I'm just letting people see you talking, and I'm going to switch it back to you when you're ready.
No worries. So,
okay.
Thank you very much.
That's all right.
So I just want to go to the next slide if I can.
I'm ready for it.
That's one too many. So I want to quickly run you through the big picture of iPhone development. So these are all the things that are involved in getting an iPhone from an idea into the App Store. So usually we would start with an idea, and
And that's the little rubber duck over there. It's our great idea. You know, we love collecting rubber ducks, and we think it's a great idea to put an app out there that tells everybody how great it is to collect rubber ducks. So this idea obviously starts in our brain. So the way I have structured it is the icon, then the description of what the icon is, and the tools we are using for it. So to create an idea, we use our brain. Then once we have validated the idea and we are comfortable with it, we probably want to put it into a flow, wireframe, and we usually put that on a whiteboard or on paper. That's the second step. Once we got that, we probably want to put it into a more digital version, put it on a computer, and simulate the flows on a computer. After that, design. Once the design is finished, we go into coding. We might actually have not only the code that is required to build an app, but also the code that is required to drive the app, and it might be an application sitting somewhere in the internet. Just symbolize that with a cloud here. Once the coding's done, we go into testing. Once the testing done, into publishing, we're publishing to the App Store. Apple's going to review it and hopefully approve it. It goes into the App Store, finally gets downloaded, and we see the hockey stick. Obviously, we want to monitor what's happening to our application once it's out there and how many people download it. So I want to just zoom into all these different areas. So idea is simple. We get almost on a daily basis, we get people to come to us and say, "Got this great app idea. Can you sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement?" And then we find out it's probably not such a great idea after all. But a lot of people are really passionate about the idea, and they come to us or other companies here in Melbourne and ask us if we can help them to turn it into an application. And of course, you know, that's our job. Ideas are funny things. You know, everybody who has an idea probably thinks that it's the best idea ever. I usually recommend to sit on the idea for a bit, let it sit there, validate it with other people, maybe ask friends and families, but not just friends and families because they probably want to be nice to you and say it's a great idea. Ask colleagues, co-workers, and validate your idea. A lot of people say, no, I don't want to tell people about my great idea, otherwise they go and steal it. It's usually not the case. It's somebody would have told somebody else about Facebook a long time ago. They would have not thought it's a great idea and probably would not have copied it. Actually, Facebook is probably not a good example because it was copied after all. So once the idea is validated and you really think that's a great idea, let's do it. We would then obviously move on and refine it a little bit, drill into the detail and say, well, what's required to get this application, what screens do we need, what functions do we need. So with wireframes, we would pretty much describe the functional points in an application. So what kind of things can I do with it? Can I create a new rubber duck? Can I add a new rubber duck? Can I favorite a rubber duck? Things like that. And how is it flowing? How do the screens actually flow? Surprisingly easy tool is the whiteboard and a piece of paper. After that, you probably want to do more wireframing. You think, yeah, that's actually still a good idea. I think we can actually bring that into the market. Then we do more wireframing, or we create mockups. And on a Mac, you would have heaps of tools. There's a mass of prototyping tools out there and wireframing tools. We usually use a simple tool called Balsamic. Does anybody know that tool? Has anybody used that tool before? It's a very simple tool. It does not make the wireframes look nice. It makes it look very rough, which I think is a good thing because that makes you focus on functionality rather than on design, because we are not in the design phase yet. We just want to figure out what's the functionality of the application. Another good tool is UXPin. It's probably a bit more a premium tool. So, if you're a big organization, UXPin might be a great tool to use. And it's a very, very cheap way to put your wireframes onto the phone, because that's what I would recommend. That's why this little phone is here on the screen. I would recommend to put your first sketches and wireframes straight onto the phone so you see how it feels and works. And I want to show you a very simple application that you can download and use, tonight if you like, to put your wireframes onto the phone. Let me see if I can get that working. So I'll just try to AirPlay onto my Mac, so you can see what I see here on the phone. Unfortunately, that's not quite working. Here we go. So there's a little application called POP, P-O-P. I think it's free for a couple of simple projects. And what it does, you can take pictures of your paper wireframes and put them onto your iPhone and simulate some flows in here. So here's a simple public transport application. First ideas scribbled on paper, and we thought, how would that look on a device? So basically, it lets you link these screens together, and you can actually run it on your phone. So it kind of pretends to be a proper application. Obviously, you can see it's not a proper application. It's just a piece of paper which I took a photo of. But it shows me how to interact with it. So I can say, yeah, I want to select the from location, and I want to go from here to the open hub, and then I have options to flip that around. This is very crude, and I also can plan a route, and that's all there really is. So I can play around with it and just see how it feels, if the function is right, if the layout is right. It's not about the design yet, it's just about the flow and the feel of the application. Very simple. You don't need a big tool for that. You don't really need to be a graphic designer. Anybody can put something on the back of an envelope and you can put it into this app. The app's called POP. So let me just so it's one of the three tools I mentioned here. Balsamic's great on the desktop, UXPin is great, it's a web-based application, and POP is super simple. You can just download it from the App Store and start creating your mockups straight away. So I guess once we over that stage where we find the mockups are fine, it all hangs together, I want to proceed, you probably want to invest into design, or you might be a designer yourself. Go ahead, open up Photoshop. There are heaps of templates out there on the internet which show you how to create nice designs on iPhone. Another application on the Mac, specifically for the Mac, is called Sketch. Does anybody know Sketch? It's an app? Yeah. It's a much simpler version of Photoshop. It's vector-based. It's great. And they have a lot of specific templates for iPhone and iPad developers. And the last option is, if you want to outsource it, you go to 99 Design, pay $300, whatever it is, and get the design done for you. Is anybody a designer here in the room? No designers? Okay. Can make designer jokes. So once the design is done, we would obviously go and code it. And a couple of tools here, specifically for Mac developers, is XCode 5. XCode 5 is the tool of choice. It's the Apple development environment. So you can download it for free from the App Store and install it. Is anybody using XCode? No? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So Xcode 5 is the latest version. It lets you create storyboards, and I'll show you a little bit around later on how that application looks like. Another company produces an application called XCode. It's an alternative if you want to do more refactoring and code wizardy things. XCode might be a better solution, but most of the developers I know use XCode. Let's quickly talk about, not the front end things, which is the iPhone itself, but let's also quickly talk about the back end things, because something needs to drive your application. If you have sharing of data, or you need to access data on the internet, you need to do it somehow. A couple of really good platforms here. Pass.com is a great company. They make it really simple for mobile developers to create back-end code, because mobile developers are usually not very good in creating servers and infrastructure and all that stuff. People are a bit more used to server infrastructure. They could go to Roku or AWS, which is the Amazon Web Service cloud. But I just simplified it as the cloud. There might be some service in the cloud you want to use, a web service or JSON data. But this is where, as an iPhone developer, a lot of time is spent in these tools, right? Xcode is the main tool for developers. So that's where we create code, where we structure code, where we debug code, where we create screen layouts, and spend pretty much 80% of our day in that tool. Let's assume we're done with development. We obviously now want to bring it out and want to get it tested. And the Rubber Duck community is obviously huge here in Melbourne, so we ask all these people to sign up to either TestFlight. TestFlightApp.com is a platform that allows you to invite beta testers, and then you can push out the applications to their phones. Or Hockey App is an alternative. TestFlight app was just recently bought by Apple, so if you don't do Android development, TestFlight app might be a good choice. So you send it out to all these users, which get the application on the phone. And the interesting thing is that Apple usually doesn't allow distribution of apps other than through the App Store. This is obviously a mechanism that's not involving the App Store. So you upload your application to this website, and your beta testers can instantly download it from there, install it on their phone, and run it. This is called ad hoc deployment, and it's an option Apple gives us developers, and we can invite up to 100 people or devices to be part of that TestFlight group. And we could, obviously, the more testers you have, the better. You would like to provide feedback and help you really to improve your application before it goes out into the App Store. There will be crashes. There's this little arrow here telling us the app will crash, and we want to understand why it crashes. Again, things like TestFlight or Hockey App will tell us what happened, give us a crash log so we can exactly see what happened and fix it. Again, let's assume we ironed out all the problems with the application. The next step would obviously be publish it to the App Store. The tool for that is iTunes Connect. And to get access to iTunes Connect, you would need to become a registered Apple developer. You pay $99, and Apple gives you access to a developer portal where you can obviously get all the documentation. You can manage provisioning profiles, which are required for the previous process, so you can send out test versions of your application. And it also allows you to publish to the App Store. So this is happening in iTunes Connect. You upload your artwork, your app description, and so on. And I'll show you a couple of screenshots later on. It's published. Now it's out of our control. It's now with Apple, and Apple's going to look at the application, and they're going to decide if it fits into their standards, and if it doesn't violate any of the human interface guidelines, for example. And usually you wait a week or so and you get a yes or no. Let's assume you get a yes, everything's fine, your app's in the App Store, and is sitting there for users to download it. If you decided to sell your application, you could do that, 99 cents or $1.29 in Australia, whatever you want to charge for it. It's all prepared and done for you in the App Store. So Apple will actually send you the money to your bank account if you have set all these connections up. And if you're lucky, Apple's actually gonna feature your application in the App Store, which will attract much more downloads. Assuming you got a lot of downloads, you want to monitor that. A couple of tools we recommend here are Google Analytics. You can add Google Analytics code into your application, so it will emit events to Google Analytics, and you can just track how many people downloaded it, what are people doing in your application. It's a very good way to learn what features work and what features don't work. So you want to use that information then to feed it back into the design of your next release. Another one is App Figures. Again, that's just giving you statistics around the usage. Flurry is one we use quite a bit, and App Annie is another one that's quite popular. So that's the overall process. So you can see there's a lot of elements involved in creating apps. There's creative elements, there's coding involved, technical elements, and also contracts and negotiation with Apple. and finally, obviously, marketing. You have to still employ marketing means the same way as you would do for any web application. I want to.
Can I ask you, did you bring a power supply with your little Mac?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay. Sorry about that. I want to quickly run you through an example. So this is a real life example. A friend of mine and I working on this application. It's a Melbourne trip planner application, and it started with an idea. Wouldn't it be good to have a simple application to plan a trip in Melbourne? And the first thing we would start with is an application definition statement. In this case, it is a simple iPhone 7 or iOS 7 app that allows users to quickly plan a trip with public transport in Melbourne. And the main user group is for visitors of Melbourne who are not familiar with our public transport system. It's not a pro tool. It's something people should just be able to pick up without knowing that we have, Tram Tracker and other applications out there. So that's the idea. And we love public transport. We want to improve it. So therefore, we're definitely going to go with that idea. There's a lot of stuff happening in the back end. There are servers involved, but that's not what I want to cover today. I pretty much want to run you through the process we went through. And this is how it started. We started with a piece of paper and drew a couple of high-level screens on there. It's really just a couple of sketches just to get the structure out there and then have a starting point. This is what we call the mock-ups. And and this is the general flow of the application. So we thought we should have a menu over there with a lot of options, which we didn't end up implementing, but we have a home, we've got timetables, show me transport near me, A to Z, listed transport. That was a bit too ambitious, so we said, hey, our application definition statement said it should be simple, so we then reduced it back to the core function of the application, which is planning a trip. But we thought, to plan a trip, you definitely need something where you say where you want to go and where you are right now. So that's the two things you need to know when you plan a trip. And so the core function for us was around those screens where we decide what kind of information is the most important information in this application. We thought the most important one is to and from. and the sort of transport you probably want to choose. Because you might say, yeah, I really don't like trains because I heard really bad things about Melbourne trains, so you prefer trams or whatever. We thought a map would be good, so to pinpoint where you are or where you want to go. And we also thought that it would be good to add some favorites, so store some of the locations you usually are or you want to go, like home and work and friends and whatever. So this is how it started. That can be done in half an hour. It's not rocket science. It's just, if you're not happy with it, you just throw it away. It's just paper. It's really, we haven't really invested a lot. Anyway, at that point we decided, it would be actually good to continue with this application. So we played around with the navigation structures as well. We thought, probably shouldn't have too many navigation levels. It shouldn't bring the user into like 10 levels down of screens. We want to keep it simple. So we thought, 4 screens, probably the maximum, and then we started to bring it into a digital mock-up stage. So with that stage, we tried to make it look a bit more like the app probably would look on the phone. So we get away from the paper now on the computer. And you might be interested that this one didn't use any of the prototyping tools I listed before. It's using actually Keynote, because it's my own project and that's the tool I'm most familiar with. And it's actually really, really easy to create a slide pack that has exactly the size of a phone screen. And then you can even, so this keyboard, for example, is pretty much a screenshot of something I had on the phone. So I'll take a screenshot, crop it, slap it into Keynote, and you can create something that looks pretty close to what I wanted to create it. So this is what we thought we want to create. We want to have this main start screen with which tells us what it is. We call it Meltrip. Couldn't think of a better name. We have some bookmarks here or favorites. We have the from and to and a dominant route button. And also we want to be able to select the mode, the transport mode here. And we thought it would be good to have a map. And from there, the requirements are quite simple. So you have selected the to and from. You say route, you want to see what kind of options you have to travel, and you select one, and then you want to see the itinerary for that particular trip you selected from, and you want to be able to see on the map. That's it. So there's a couple of more screens hidden, but these are the primary screens, the primary flow. And when we do app development, we definitely want to focus on the main flow through the application, because that's where the user spends most of their time, and we want to get that right. This is how it will look in your development tool. If you go into XCode, the whole application is done in XCode, and we use a concept in XCode called storyboards. So storyboards sounds a bit like, is that not a mock-up tool? Can't you do your mock-ups in there? As you can see, the screens are all interconnected, and I see how they navigate, how I can get from one screen to another screen. But you don't have that visual richness as in my Keynote mock-ups. Here I got all the visual details, all the colors, and everything right. And in Storyboard, there's a lot of things you still have to do in code. So even you have this layout, you still need to go into code, load the right pictures, and manage obviously all the things that are going to happen on the screen, all the dynamic parts. But this is how XCode looks like. I might actually give you a quick sneak peek into the code. So if you look at that project, it's a lot of code in there, and this is the storyboard I just showed you before. This is all real, so this is what we're currently working on. And so you can zoom in and pan around, focus on certain areas. So this one is, let me quickly focus on this particular cell here. So here I've got a couple of placeholders which will tell me the departure and arrival time of a particular transport and how long it takes. These are obviously hard-coded numbers, but they're going to be replaced later on in my code. It's a typical navigation structure here, so we navigate. A typical application on iOS has obviously navigation controllers which navigate from one screen to another screen using the slide in metaphor. And so it's quite a simple app, but you can see there's quite a lot of screens involved already, and it's even getting worse if we start looking at the code that's involved in creating something like that. So there's a lot of code here. Yeah, there's a lot of icons here. So all these icons are actually sitting here in this folder, and these icons and artwork should obviously come from your designer. Designer would need to provide them in the right resolution, so you drop them into your project and then position them in storyboard on your particular screens. So there's a lot of stuff, it kind of grows and grows. Yeah. So it doesn't look like a huge project, but there's a lot of code required to manage the state, to connect to the server, to handle all these error conditions. And XCode is pretty much the tool of choice here. So the code is going to look like that. This is Objective-C. Objective-C is the language to develop apps in. And if anybody's interested, maybe after the session we can go a little bit more into XCode. For now I just want to leave it here and probably switch back to the presentation. So what we've just done. So I want to run you quickly through the evolution of the application. So this is the first version of the application, which was very simple. So we just focused on, we wanted just the first screen should be working. So how would that first screen look like? And it's a simple screen. It again has these to and from things in there. And what the user obviously wants to do, they want to type in a location. So we need to, as they type, we need to find the location in with the Apple Maps framework. There is a framework where we can send a location string, and they will actually return a proper location to us if they find something. So if I type in Melbourne Museum, Melbourne Muse, and they would already find Melbourne Museum is probably one of the search results. So we can do auto completion and things like that with that approach. So that's obviously very important, so that a user can quickly find the place they want to go, and the other three. I mean, the three most important things for me when I plan a trip is it's my current location. Probably going to want to go from where I am right now. It's in my case it's home or work, so I would use those as bookmarks. I want to have them in a list to pick from, so I don't have to type it in every single time. So application should be smart enough to remember what I typed in. And we could see it's kind of working on this first screen. It's all good, and we moved on from there. And this was the first iteration of the application. So after four versions of this application, we ended up with this version here, which again you might see some subtle differences here. So we introduced icons here for the user, so they see what it's about. Current location has the little arrow thing. The maps represented by a pin, and all these recent locations have a little icon which is representing is just a little clock which represents obviously recent. We introduced the Melbourne transport colors here, so tram is green, train is blue, and pretty much tried to imitate our initial mock design, which I did in Keynote, as much as possible, but we didn't really focus on the pixel perfection at that stage. That's going to come later. And we also want to see if that mock design is actually correct and is it working. And you can only
see that once you put in code and do your program. So we also obviously working on the itinerary layout, which give us enough information to make the right decision if we want to go on that trip or not, and the integrated map, which was the route on the map. So that's pretty much where the user is going to go back and forth to find the right trip for them, and we thought that's the most important screen. So we put all our focus in there. This is the current state of the application. So you see a couple of things have happened. We changed color to red. The reason for that was we just want to make sure that it's not conflicting with the blue of the frame color. And we also try to give the user more options so here the user can expand and pick a time when you want to travel. But other than that, we try to keep it really simple, as simple as that. There's one more option where the user can walking speed and something else that I remember. And here on the lower part of the start, you see a couple of secondary screens. So I didn't bring them out as much because they're really the function the user probably not going to use all the time. But it's important for the user to create a new location and to their favorites and be able to edit and delete that location or change the location. So that's the app as it stands. And one comment I want to make is that this app looks different to our original design, or what we thought it's going to look. Pretty subtle,
all of the things, but we have moved so many elements, probably 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times from one screen to another screen to get the optimum flow for the end user into the app.
So that ends pretty much the example of our transport app. What I want to show you now is how we actually get that thing out to the end, to the test code. So development's finished, and actually testing should be done during development. So we don't want to get the beta test code in after the application is finished. We want to actually get through that test code in as early as possible. So I showed you the first version. That version I didn't send out to the beta testers. The second version I showed you, that was the version we sent out to beta testers and tried to get that feedback. So here is that application for Testflight allows you to invite people. So this is me and my colleague Daniel, be part of that test team. You can send out the application to see if they have installed it, if they're using it, and then they install it. So you have a really good way of finding out what the user is doing with the application. That's super important information for any developers to know how people use the application. And if they don't use it, that's very important piece of information as well. They can obviously something is wrong with the application and they're not engaged with the application. Okay, testing's done, everybody's happy, the users will give me a little feedback, bug fixing, the last bits of design changes have been done, your app icon has been decided on, and all that stuff ready to go. So next thing is we need to bring it into submit it to Apple, and who we use it for that is iTunes Connect. iTunes Connect is what you get access to when you pay $99 and become an Apple developer. And the $99 give you a couple of things. Give you access. They allow you to publish to the App Store. They also give you access to the Apple team. With the Apple team, they actually look at your application. They really will install your application and test it. And if anything's wrong with the application, you press immediately. They're going to reject it. Sounds bad, but for me that's feedback. They reject it. They usually tell you what they found is wrong with the application, and they give you an opportunity to fix that, resubmit it, and hopefully make the app better. So someone who actually pays for testing service here, especially if you submit the application 5 times and it hasn't improved, I don't know how good Apple's patience is, giving the application in the future. you submitted your application and it has been approved, this is the kind of screen you're going to see. Your application icon is there. You get an SKU, which is kind of nice. I mean, from a retail perspective, it's a product which you can sell. Or in this case, this is the free application we built, I think last year. And tells you a couple of information things. It also gives you access to crash logs, so you kind of can find out if the application has crashed since you put in the app store. The users might have installed it on their app, on their phone. They run it, it crashes. If the user has allowed to send information back to Apple, it will be stored in here, and you can go and see what that crash was. Again, improve your application based on that. Pretty good. We had access to customer reviews in one spot. So this is very important as well to get feedback about your application. And customer reviews are great. One criticism I have is that you can't respond to any customer reviews. So if somebody expected something else after they download the application and they give you a 1-star review, pretty much nothing you can do as a developer. You can only try to get as many 5-star reviews as possible. So that's why you see in some applications it pops out and says, hey, it's great and I see those 5 stars. And that's annoying for the end user, but it's the only way for a developer to really get a balanced review count, because usually people who are not happy with the application are much happier to give you a bad review than people who are happy with the application. Then, after it's all out there in the App Store, you still can't rely on Apple or the App Store popularity or to get your application approved as well. You still have to do your tracking marketing. So with this application, for example, Passrocket is a simple loyalty application which cafes can put on their counter. You can download their loyalty passport, which is built into Apple, and walk into your cafe, scan your passport pass to this new application, and collect points in the pass and upload. So it's like a coffee card electronically. So we still have to have a website. We still need to explain the audience how the application works outside of the Apple App Store. And that's pretty much the end of the application. Now it's sitting there, and I guess you collect your information, the detail, you monitor it, you see how many people are downloading it, how they're using it, how the reviews are going, and hopefully go and create another version which is better than what we put in the first place in the App Store. And that's pretty much
all I wanted to show today, and obviously happy to answer any questions or have a nice discussion. Thank you.
Now we're going to turn the camera around a little bit so we can see you guys. Just a little test on this. Let's just do a little test on this and see how it comes up. Oh yes, there we go. So we can move that around and include you. Yes, it reverses it. Yeah, because the camera's there. Oh, Charlie, you want to lead off with any questions?
Do you have questions? Yes.
Yes.
Great public transport user, so really interested in that sort of thing. My question is, in terms of the databases, the Victoria, are they public in the sense that they've got APIs and things where you can actually just tap into and gather what you need to and so on, or is it you have to do a lot of work to sort of interpret what their data is and then put it into the I don't know.
Yeah, no, very good question. It wasn't public, now it is. So they have actually opened up the API, and I think that was the right decision, because now they leave it to the app developers, who are usually quite innovative and smart, to create nice apps for the audience, for public transport users. There are APIs, and there are different approaches. So some apps use the API directly, so you would actually, with each request, go to PTV and get the data, or you would have probably a cached version somewhere and go and update it regularly, and that data is there. It's not in a very standardized format, so that's why
you can't go down
I realize this is sort of like asking how long is a piece of string, but how long does it take to develop an app?
It's a good question, and it is between. I guess the shortest one is probably like 8 weeks. You know, you can get something out in 8 weeks, but if you have quite a complex app, so we
Probably the November app, which is the campaign app for November. That is a long piece of string, but it's a lot of work involved in there. But something like this, still public transport app, you can do it over a couple of months over the weekend. So it is actually possible for independent developers to do it on the side. They have their job, logic liner, to build an app on the side.
it is actually possible. The tools are there. It's affordable. There's no expensive tool chain involved, and people really are free to develop the apps in their spare time. But professional apps between, I guess, 8 weeks and probably 6 months was probably the longest. That's for the initial app build, and then after that you would obviously go into a release build cycle, so it could take years to keep the app fresh.
And how long, or how do you?
Yes, so the minimum team size we have
Is 2. We always want to have 2 developers working on one app, because we know it's improving the quality. It's more fun, be 2 on a project. That's the minimum. People who work, on the side can do it by themselves. So there's one is an okay team size. Independent developers who are very successful. So there's
some independent developers, especially in Australia, create really great apps, and they have quite small teams. Usually it's one developer and one designer. That's what it is. It's not like 5 testers, 10 developers. It's very simple, very small teams work actually quite well. In a big corporate environment, you could probably scale up to 5, 6, 7 people. I haven't tried with corporate customers.
tell me they need 10, 12 app developers, they probably wouldn't do the job, because that's just going to scream for inefficiency.
Right, it's sort of a freebie out there. What's the incentive for you to do something like this to experiment with the itself? Where's the monetization the fee you're looking for? If you're going to do it yourself, what's the actual?
That is a very good question. This particular one, so I had 2 apps I demonstrated. The public transport one will be free, and we're not going to make money with it, but I think we do it because we want to improve public transport in Melbourne. It's our city. We just want to make it better. That's the motivation. It's an exercise, and obviously where we tried the Apple banner ads, and surprisingly it generates a couple of dollars a month, so it's it's good.
The app itself doesn't have a lot of demand on bandwidth in respect of manipulation of other than retrieving data to present it to the end user.
Yeah.
If the app was more defined in respect of interaction for providing a service,
Yeah.
you'd have to have in the background your own server and database and record keeping and logs of individual persons and that.
Yeah.
We'd extended this sort of application development to that sort of 6 months rather than 2 months. Is that really right? Something like that?
Yes and no. So I guess with traditional tools, we probably would then see more a 6-month project, because you would have a lot of server interaction. You need to figure out the APIs, and we work actually for financial institutions quite a bit, and that's where longer projects come out. Is these financial institutions need to be very strict about security, about the consistency of the API and all these things. We there's a new movement. So if you're an independent developer, which probably doesn't have all these constraints a corporate has, then you can just go to this service I mentioned, pass.com. It's a service that has been bought by Facebook. So obviously if Facebook thinks it's going to be big, it's probably going to be big. What they do is they host very simple things for you. There's databases, so you can actually create a database on the fly. You can create an API within really minutes, and you can easily integrate users with Facebook, and that's all kind of coming out of the box. You just drop in this software developer kit into your application, and you get all these features with remote access to web resources, which again brings the 6 months down to weeks really.
In referring to sort of even the app as a category, the one you've described as sort of very public and very free, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of developers would be there for corporate bodies and sort of for in-house applications
Yep.
for the business of poacher. A lot of those that we've seen sort of that the ideal is to make a lot of money out of, they
Yep.
tend to be very public and a lot of development. And games are in things that service social media and things like that, which are new developers. Where do you go in your modelling of this applying your application methodology to maybe a game or to some other service that's a thought pattern outside of corporate body or more for the Apple user or the end user to try a new thing?
Yeah.
Even a system operating, sort of something that's more associated with upgrading the system rather than an application out there for public use.
Yeah. So I'll try to answer it as best as I can.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I would say we have different methodologies for different areas. So we have a methodology which is more for corporates, which is more stringent. We have processes and we track tickets and stories and all that stuff. Then we would have a different methodology. For example, what we do a lot is educational applications. Educational applications are a bit closer to games than to corporate utility apps, right? So with these applications, we have a different approach. So we probably go more into the game development and use more creative things like storyboarding a lot, and that is a completely different approach.
It would incorporate more steps in there, a lot more than what you've shown today. Example of a game, it has to go back to mother to get something or other on a frequent basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah. So there definitely, this is a simplified version I showed you. There is every single step you could drill down, especially around the beginning of the application, which is around the concept phase. So what's the concept? Is it going to work? You want to test the concept really, not just on the app. You might actually even want to test it on paper, interactively with groups, if it's a game, for example. And so that is a completely different approach to building a standard.
Research in that case to do it would be more appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for the good questions.
Other questions? Okay, well, please go on again, and we will have our 30-minute break and then be back promptly for our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.